When we speak about mistakes to avoid, one of the first and most common is related to the concept of hijab and modesty. Many sisters today fall into the trap of treating hijab as if it were a cultural ornament or a fashion accessory. For some, it becomes a matter of color coordination, brand names, or how stylishly it can be worn to impress others. But the hijab was never meant to be reduced to that. Its essence lies in obedience to Allah, in drawing a line that protects your dignity, and in declaring to the world that you value yourself too highly to be defined by external appearances. Now, let's be very clear. There is nothing wrong with dressing neatly, beautifully, or even fashionably. Islam does not ask a woman to be unattractive or careless about her appearance, but the line is crossed when the purpose of the hijab is forgotten. If it no longer serves as a shield of modesty but rather becomes a tool of attraction, then we must stop and ask, who are we really dressing for? Are we covering for the sake of Allah, or uncovering through style for the sake of people's admiration? The psychology behind this mistake is worth thinking about. Human beings crave validation. We all want to be acknowledged, liked, and respected. Social media has only amplified that desire, making likes and comments feel like a measure of our worth. So, naturally, some may try to adjust even their hijab to gain that approval, but what happens in the process is that the hijab becomes disconnected from its spiritual meaning. Instead of it being a statement of devotion, it becomes another layer of performance. And when devotion is replaced with performance, sincerity is lost. Philosophically, the hijab represents something very profound. It is a reminder that a woman is not merely a physical being to be consumed by the gaze of others, but a soul with immense worth and purpose. It is a rejection of objectification, a protest against being reduced to appearance, and a declaration of independence from societal pressures that constantly tell women they are not enough unless they look a certain way. To dilute that symbol into a matter of fashion is, in a sense, to rob it of its liberating power. And there's another layer to this. Some sisters believe that as long as they wear the scarf, even if the rest of the outfit is tight, short, or revealing, they have fulfilled the requirement. But the spirit of modesty goes beyond a piece of cloth on the head. It is about conduct, speech, behavior, and how we carry ourselves in public and private. When the Quran speaks about modesty, it speaks holistically, not in fragments. The outer modesty reflects the inner state of the heart. If the heart is modest before Allah, the body will follow. It's also important to realize that hijab is not a punishment, nor is it meant to limit freedom. In fact, it is one of the greatest forms of empowerment. A woman who covers is making a statement. I define myself on my own terms, and my value is not negotiable. The paradox is that in trying to free themselves by imitating trends, many end up enslaving themselves to the approval of strangers. True freedom is found in breaking that cycle and seeking only Allah's pleasure. So, my dear sisters, the mistake is not in wanting to look beautiful. That desire is natural. The mistake is in forgetting why Allah asked us to cover in the first place. When you wear hijab, wear it with intention, with dignity, and with consciousness of Allah. Don't allow the world to cheapen something that was meant to elevate you. At the end of the day, the hijab is not about fabric, it's about faith. And when faith becomes your foundation, the fabric becomes a crown of honor rather than just a piece of cloth. Remember this, the moment you realize your worth with Allah is greater than people's opinions, you will never again compromise the purpose of your modesty. Another major mistake many Muslim women fall into, and in fact, many Muslim men as well, is giving the dunya priority over the deen. And this is not always intentional. Sometimes it happens so subtly that we don't even notice it. We tell ourselves, I'll pray after this meeting, or I'll read Quran when I'm less busy, or I'll focus on deen when I'm older. Slowly but surely, what happens is that the worldly life takes center stage, and the deen becomes something secondary, something that only fits into our leftover time. Think about it. The dunya is designed to attract you. It dazzles with its opportunities, its comforts, its pleasures, and its ambitions. And yes, Islam does not tell us to abandon dunya completely. You can pursue education, careers, businesses, wealth, and beauty. But the danger lies in obsession. when the pursuit of these things blinds us to the ultimate reality, that all of it is temporary. If the dunya controls you, if it dictates your priorities, then the deen becomes compromised. There's a psychological layer to this. Human beings are hardwired to chase what gives them instant gratification. Social media, entertainment, shopping, all of it feeds into this quick dopamine rush. On the other hand, spiritual growth often feels slow, quiet, and unseen. Reading Quran doesn't give you likes, praying tahajjud doesn't trend, giving charity doesn't go viral, and because we are conditioned to look for immediate results, the dunya feels more rewarding than the deen. That's the deception. The dunya gives you quick sparks of pleasure, but they burn out just as quickly. The deen gives you lasting peace, but only if you invest consistently. Philosophically, this comes down to a question of identity. Are you defined by what you own, what you wear, your degree, your job title, or your social following? Or are you defined by your taqwa, your patience, your kindness, and your obedience to Allah? If you build your sense of self on dunya, it will crumble the moment circumstances change. Beauty fades, careers end, wealth can disappear overnight. But if you build your identity on deen, on something eternal, it will never be shaken. That is why the Prophet said, "Be in this world as though you are a stranger or a traveler." The traveler knows this is not home. She doesn't decorate every stop on the journey as if she will live there forever. She takes what she needs to reach her true destination, and for many women, this dunya over deen imbalance shows up in subtle ways. It might be choosing work over Salah, or spending hours on makeup but seconds on dua, or scrolling endlessly through TikTok while saying, "I don't have time to read Quran." These are not small habits. They are reflections of what we value most, because time is the most honest indicator of priority. Whatever you give your time to, that is your God in practice, whether you admit it or not. None of this means you shouldn't pursue excellence in the dunya. Islam encourages women to study, to work, to create, to contribute, but the key is balance. Let your dunya serve your deen, not replace it. Study so you can benefit the ummah, work so you can support your family and give charity. Beautify yourself in ways that align with modesty. In that way, your dunya becomes a tool for deen, not a distraction from it. My sisters, remember this: the dunya is like a shadow. If you chase it, you will never catch it. If you turn towards Allah, the dunya will follow you. Don't trade what is eternal for what is temporary. Prioritize your deen, and you'll find that your dunya will fall into place. So I leave you with this reflection: when your life ends, and it surely will, what will matter most? The career, the followers, the likes, the wealth, or the moments you stood before Allah sincerely in prayer? The answer to that question should guide every choice you make. One of the most destructive mistakes Muslim women fall into today is the constant habit of comparing themselves to others. And this is not limited to appearance. It could be comparing wealth, lifestyle, family, achievements, even acts of worship. But perhaps the most visible and damaging comparisons happen in the age of social media. A quick scroll through Instagram or TikTok can make someone feel like her life is inadequate, her beauty is lacking, her family is not as perfect, and her achievements are not enough. And yet, deep down, we all know that what people display online is not the full picture. It is a carefully curated highlight reel. Still, the heart struggles to resist comparing. Psychologically, comparison is a thief of peace. The moment you measure yourself against someone else's journey, you undermine your own. Instead of focusing on what Allah has blessed you with, your attention shifts to what He has given someone else. That shift leads to envy, insecurity, and a sense of ungratefulness. It creates a never-ending cycle. The more you compare, the more dissatisfied you feel. The more dissatisfied you feel, the less you recognize your blessings. And the less you recognize your blessings, the more distant you grow from gratitude and contentment. Philosophically, comparison rests on a flawed assumption that life is a competition measured by material markers, but Allah reminds us in the Quran that He is the one who distributes provision as He wills. He has given some more wealth, some more beauty, some more influence, and others less, not because He favors one person over the other in essence, but because every soul is being tested in different ways. The one who has wealth is tested with generosity. The one who has beauty is tested with modesty. The one who has knowledge is tested with humility. So when you compare, you are essentially envying someone else's test without realizing that you have your own, designed perfectly for you. Another layer here is identity. When women compare themselves constantly, they allow others to define their sense of worth. If she looks better, I must be less. If her marriage looks happier, mine must be failing. If she has more followers, I must be irrelevant. But identity rooted in comparison is fragile. It breaks the moment someone outshines you. Identity rooted in Allah's love, in your taqwa, in your effort and sincerity. Now that is unshakable. That is why the Prophet reminded us not to look to those above us in worldly matters, but to those below us, so that we remain grateful. Let us also recognize the subtle spiritual danger in comparison. It feeds arrogance or despair. If you compare and feel superior, arrogance creeps in. If you compare and feel inferior, despair takes root. Both arrogance and despair are poisons to the soul. The healthier alternative is to compare yourself only to your past self. Ask, am I closer to Allah today than I was yesterday? Have I improved in my character, in my prayer, in my patience? That is the only comparison that matters. The journey of your soul, not the illusion of someone else's. Practically, this means learning to guard your gaze, not just from haram sites, but from sites that harm your heart. If scrolling leaves you feeling bitter, anxious, or envious, then perhaps it is time to limit that exposure. Redirect that time to dhikr, Quran, or even genuine, nourishing relationships offline. Surround yourself with people who remind you of Allah, not people who fuel insecurity. My sisters, the truth is simple. Comparison blinds you to your own blessings and chains you to someone else's life. But gratitude opens your eyes to the richness of what you already have, so remember this, stop comparing your behind. The scenes with someone else's highlight reel. Instead, compare your today with your yesterday, and make sure tomorrow you are closer to Allah than you are right now. That is the only race worth running. Another serious mistake many sisters make is compromising in relationships and friendships. And I don't just mean romantic relationships, although that is often the most obvious one. I also mean the friendships we choose, the circles we enter, the people we allow to influence our thoughts and behaviors. At the heart of it, this mistake comes from a deep human need, the need to belong. Everyone wants to feel accepted, loved, and valued. But when that need for belonging makes you compromise your faith, your dignity, and your self-respect, then what you have gained is far less than what you have lost. Take, for example, the growing normalization of harem relationships. Many young Muslim women fall into them not because they don't know the rulings, but because they feel pressured by society. They see relationships glorified in movies, celebrated on social media, romanticized by peers, and they begin to feel that if they don't have one, they are somehow missing out. But ask yourself, missing out on what? A temporary thrill that often leads to heartbreak, regret, and spiritual emptiness, when Allah has promised you something far more pure, far more fulfilling within the boundaries of halal. The compromise may bring a moment of excitement, but it also brings a lifetime of consequences, both in this world and the next. And then there is the matter of friendships. Sometimes a sister surrounds herself with people who constantly pull her away from Allah. Friends who normalize gossip, who encourage immodesty, who push her to engage in activities that chip away at her faith. Slowly, her standards drop, her values shift, and she begins to accept what she once would never have tolerated. Why? Because she doesn't want to lose the group. She doesn't want to be the odd one out. But here's the truth. If the price of belonging is disobeying Allah, then that group is not your home. True friends are those who protect your akhira, not those who risk it. Psychologically, compromise in relationships often stems from insecurity. A woman who does not recognize her own worth will seek validation from others, even if it means lowering her standards. She tells herself, at least someone wants me, or at least I'm not alone. But loneliness with Allah is better than companionship that distances you from Him, because in reality, the loneliest person is not the one who is single or socially isolated. It is the one who is surrounded by people but disconnected from her Creator. Philosophically, this mistake reveals something deeper about how we measure value. Too often we equate worth with who loves us, who chooses us, who invites us in, but Allah has already chosen you. He created you, honored you, and gave you the dignity of being Muslim. What greater validation could you possibly seek? If the approval of people costs you the approval of Allah, then it is not worth the price. And if people abandon you for holding onto your principles, know that Allah will replace them with something better. The Prophet said, "A person is upon the religion of his close friend, so let one of you look at whom he befriends." This hadith is not just advice, it is a warning. Who you surround yourself with shapes who you become. If you walk with those heading towards Allah, you will find yourself moving forward even when you feel weak. But if you walk with those heading away from Him, you will eventually be dragged in that direction, whether you like it or not. So my dear sisters, do not sell yourself short. Do not compromise your deen, your values, or your honor for the fleeting comfort of people's approval. You are worth far more than that. Surround yourself with those who remind you of Allah, who lift you up in faith, who value you not for how you look or what you can give them, but for the soul that Allah has placed within you. Remember this, it is better to stand alone with Allah than to walk with a crowd that leads you away from Him. Another mistake many Muslim women fall into is neglecting knowledge and personal growth. And when I say knowledge, I don't just mean formal education like school or university. I mean authentic Islamic knowledge, the kind that roots you in faith, that gives you clarity, that empowers you to live with purpose. Too often, sisters rely solely on cultural practices, family traditions, or hearsay from friends and social media. While culture can sometimes align with Islam, it is not a substitute for actual knowledge. Without knowledge, it becomes very easy to confuse culture with religion, or worse, to practice Islam in a way that is shallow, fragmented, or even incorrect. One of the reasons this happens is because knowledge takes effort. It requires time, reflection, and humility to admit that you may not know everything. In a world where everything is instant news, instant communication, instant gratification, many people are unwilling to invest in the slow, steady journey of seeking knowledge. But here's the thing, just as you cannot build a house without a foundation, you cannot build a life of faith without knowledge. Without that foundation, every challenge, every doubt, every trend will shake you. Psychologically, neglecting knowledge leaves a person vulnerable. Imagine walking into a debate about Islam with no understanding of what the Quran or Sunnah actually say, or facing a personal crisis without knowing the wisdom Allah has already revealed for such situations. Doubt creeps in, confusion spreads, and eventually some even begin to feel that Islam has no answers for modern life. But the truth is, Islam has every answer. We just haven't sought them. It is not the deen that is deficient, it is our effort to learn that is lacking. Philosophically, this mistake touches on something deeper, the very purpose of knowledge in Islam. Knowledge is not just about information, it is about transformation. It is meant to refine your heart, strengthen your character, and deepen your connection with Allah. It is not enough to say, "I am Muslim by identity." That is like being given a seed but never planting it. The seed has potential, but without nourishment, it will never grow into a tree that gives shade and fruit. Knowledge is that nourishment. It allows your Imaan to grow into something strong, something that benefits you and benefits others. For women especially, this pursuit of knowledge is vital. A mother without knowledge cannot guide her children correctly. A wife without knowledge cannot be a true source of wisdom and support in her household. A daughter without knowledge cannot distinguish between cultural pressure and divine command. And a woman without knowledge cannot truly empower herself or others, because empowerment without truth is just noise. When a woman learns, she uplifts generations. She becomes a light not only for herself, but for everyone around her. And in today's time, excuses are fewer than ever. Authentic lectures, courses, Quran tafsir, hadith collections, all are available at the touch of a button. Yes, the internet has its dangers, but it also offers access to knowledge in ways our ancestors could only dream of. The real question is, do we dedicate time to it? Do we treat it as a priority? Or do we spend hours scrolling aimlessly, convincing ourselves that we are too busy to learn, when in reality we are simply choosing not to? My sisters, knowledge is power, but not the kind of power that inflates the ego. It is the kind that humbles you, grounds you, and brings you closer to Allah. It gives you clarity in a confusing world, confidence in your decisions, and peace in your heart. Neglecting knowledge is like walking through life blindfolded, stumbling at every turn, but seeking knowledge is like turning on the light. You see clearly, you walk with purpose, and you avoid unnecessary harm. So here is the reflection I leave you with: your growth, your strength, your ability to serve Allah and His creation. All of it depends on how much you are willing to learn. Don't let ignorance define your journey. Seek knowledge, live it, and let it shape you into a woman of faith, wisdom, and dignity. Because the one who seeks knowledge for Allah will never walk in darkness. One of the greatest mistakes Muslim women can fall into is underestimating their role as leaders of the Ummah. And when I say leadership, I don't necessarily mean standing on a stage, holding a microphone, or running an organization. Leadership in Islam is much deeper than positions or titles. It is influence. It is impact. It is the ability to shape minds, hearts, and futures, often in ways that are quiet, unseen, and yet profoundly powerful. And no one can deny that women have always been at the heart of this. Think about it. Every great scholar, every visionary leader, every strong believer who has walked this earth was nurtured first by a woman. The home is often the first madrasa, and the mother is often the first teacher. But leadership does not stop there. A woman influences not only her children, but her spouse, her siblings, her friends, her community. Every word she speaks, every value she holds, every example she sets, it ripples outward, sometimes across generations. When a woman forgets this, when she underestimates her own power, she risks diminishing her own potential and weakening the Ummah as a whole. Psychologically, many women downplay their role because society has conditioned them to believe that influence equals visibility. If no one is applauding, if no one is watching, if there are no public achievements, then it must not matter. But Islam teaches us otherwise. The unseen deeds, the quiet sacrifices, the silent moments of patience, all of these carry immense weight with Allah. A woman who raises her children with love and taqwa may never trend online, but her impact could produce generations of believers who change the world. That is leadership, that is legacy. Philosophically, leadership is tied to responsibility. The Quran reminds us that every soul is a shepherd, and every shepherd will be asked about their flock. A woman is a shepherd of her household, of her relationships, and even of her own soul. To underestimate that role is to misunderstand the very trust Allah has placed upon her. And when we talk about the decline or strength of the Ummah, we cannot ignore the central role women play. The values instilled at home, the examples set in everyday life, the way dignity and faith are modeled, all of these shape the collective future of the community. And let us not forget history. Khadijah supported the Prophet at the very beginning of his mission, offering strength when the world rejected him. Aisha became one of the greatest scholars of hadith, teaching generations of men and women alike. Fatima embodied modesty, resilience, and devotion. These women did not underestimate their roles. They embraced them fully, and their names are remembered with honor until today. If they had chosen to remain passive, to shrink from responsibility, the legacy of Islam itself would have been weaker. In our time, many women have talents, skills, and opportunities that can be used for the sake of Allah, but they hold back out of fear or self-doubt. Some tell themselves, I am just one person, what difference can I make? But that thinking is another trap of Shaitan. Change begins with one person, one home, one decision to live consciously. You don't have to do everything. You only have to do your part, sincerely, and Allah will amplify it. So, my sisters, don't underestimate your worth. Don't think your role is small. Every prayer you make for your family, every word of encouragement you give, every moment you spend in teaching, guiding, or nurturing, it all counts. It all builds, it all leads to an Ummah that stands stronger. Remember this, the strength of the Ummah begins in the strength of its women. And when a woman realizes the weight of her role and fulfills it with faith, she doesn't just change her own life. She changes the destiny of generations to come.